Dragon Emperor returned early from war and couldn't believe what his human maid was doing. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The scent of smoke and conquest still clung to Emperor Vadrax's scales as his massive form descended through the atmosphere of his homeworld. After 3 years of brutal combat against the Krell Dominion, the war had ended not with the expected months of siege, but with a decisive victory that had caught even the Dragon Emperor himself by surprise. Crimson clouds parted as his massive wings cut through the dawn sky. Below him, the sprawling imperial palace of Dragonheart gleamed like a jewel, its crystalline spires reaching toward the heavens as if in greeting. Vadrax's keen eyes, capable of spotting a field mouse from miles above, immediately focused on the royal nursery in the eastern wing. His son, Prince Caliph, would be 3 years old now. The emperor had departed for war mere days after the hatching, leaving the infant dragon prince in the care of the palace staff, with specific instructions for the human maid, Emily Parker, to be his primary caretaker. The choice had been controversial among his advisors, but Vadrax had stood firm. Humans possessed a nurturing quality rare among dragonkind, and Emily had proven herself loyal beyond question during her 5 years of service. The Emperor's massive form cast a shadow over the courtyard as he landed with surprising grace for a creature of his size. Guards snapped to attention, their obsidian armor reflecting the early morning light. They had not expected him for another 2 weeks at the earliest. "Your Imperial Majesty," the captain of the guard stammered, dropping to one knee. "We had no word of your return." The Krell surrendered more quickly than anticipated. Vadrax rumbled, his voice like distant thunder. "Their resolve crumbled when we captured their breeding grounds." He folded his massive wings against his armored back. "Where's my son?" "In the royal nursery, Your Majesty, with the human." Vadrax nodded, his golden eyes narrowing. "I will go to him immediately." "No announcements. I wish to see how they fare without preparation." The guard captain hesitated, just for a moment, before bowing deeply. "As you command, Emperor." Vadrax moved through the palace corridors, his claws clicking against the marble floors. Dragons and other species alike pressed themselves against walls as he passed, offering hasty bows and murmured greetings. The Emperor barely acknowledged them, his mind fixed on the reunion with his son. As he approached the nursery wing, he slowed his pace. Years of battlefield stealth had taught him to move with surprising silence despite his enormous size. He detected the faint smell of human, mixed with the distinctive scent of his offspring. But there was something else, music and laughter echoing down the hallway. Vadrax paused outside the nursery door, his senses alert. Through the partially opened doorway, he could see movement, and what he witnessed made the ancient dragon freeze in place. Emily Parker, her dark hair tied back in a simple braid, was dancing around the nursery with Prince Caliph. But this was no ordinary dance. The human woman had somehow fashioned makeshift wings from what appeared to be bedsheets and fastened them to the young dragon's back. Caliph was prancing on his hind legs, something dragon younglings rarely did, mimicking Emily's movements as she sang a human song about flying. "Higher, higher," Emily sang, her voice clear and melodious. "Like your father in the sky." "Higher," Caliph repeated, his voice still carrying the chirping quality of dragon younglings. The prince executed a perfect spin, his improvised wings fluttering behind him. "That's it," Emily laughed, clapping her hands. "You're becoming as graceful as your father. He'll be so proud when he returns." "When will father come home?" Caliph asked, dropping to all fours, his expression suddenly serious in a way that struck Vadrax as remarkably mature for a 3-year-old. Emily knelt beside the young dragon, her hand gently stroking the scales between his budding horns. "Your father is fighting to keep you and all of us safe. The war is difficult, but he's the strongest, wisest dragon in the Empire. He'll return as soon as he can. Will he like me?" The vulnerability in his son's voice pierced Vadrax's heart like no enemy weapon ever could. "Oh, Caliph," Emily said softly. "He will adore you. How could he not?" You're smart and kind and brave. Everything a dragon emperor should be. Vadrax watched as his son nuzzled against the human woman's shoulder, a gesture of affection rarely seen between dragons and other species. Emily wrapped her arms around the young dragon's neck, seemingly unafraid of the sharp scales that could easily slice human skin. Now, Emily said, standing up, we should practice your history lesson before Lord Dracarys arrives for your official studies. What are the 3 virtues of dragonkind? Caliph sat back on his haunches, straightening his posture in a way that made him look remarkably like a miniature version of his father. Strength, wisdom, and honor, he recited confidently. Excellent. And what did Emperor Vadrax III do when the archipelago worlds rebelled? The young dragon tilted his head thoughtfully. He listened to their grievances and changed the imperial taxes because they were unfair. That's right. Emily beamed. Your ancestor showed that true strength isn't just about breathing fire and winning battles. Sometimes it's about knowing when to listen and when to change. Vadrax felt something stir within him, a mixture of surprise and admiration. This wasn't the standard imperial history taught to younglings. Traditionally, the story emphasized how Vadrax III had shown mercy after crushing the rebellion. But Emily's version held more truth and more wisdom. As he continued to watch unnoticed, the Emperor saw Emily guide his son through not just dragon history, but human stories, mathematics presented as games, and most surprisingly, ethics presented through scenarios that required Caliph to think beyond the simple answers. What if a smaller dragon took food from an even smaller lizard? Emily asked. The dragon should give it back, Caliph answered promptly. But what if the dragon was starving? Caliph frowned, his tiny forehead wrinkling in concentration. Then maybe they should share? Or the dragon could help the lizard find more food for both of them. Emily smiled. That's thoughtful, Caliph. Sometimes there isn't one right answer, but looking for a solution that helps everyone is usually a good start. Vadrax had seen enough. He pushed the door open fully, his massive form filling the doorway. Emily gasped, immediately dropping into a deep curtsy. Caliph stared up at his father, eyes wide with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. Your Imperial Majesty, Emily said, her voice steady despite her obvious surprise. We had no word of your return. Evidently, Vadrax rumbled, his golden eyes taking in the scene. The makeshift wings now lying forgotten on the floor, the scattered books, the star charts on the walls that had not been there when he left. Rise, Emily Parker. She straightened, placing a protective hand on Caliph's shoulder. The gesture was subtle but spoke volumes about her relationship with the young prince. Vadrax noticed how his son leaned slightly into her touch, drawing comfort from her presence. Father, Caliph's voice was small but clear. Vadrax lowered his massive head until he was eye level with his son. Yes, Prince Caliph. I have returned from war. The young dragon took a hesitant step forward, then stopped, glancing back at Emily as if seeking guidance. It's all right, she encouraged softly. Go meet your father. Caliph approached slowly, his movements displaying the natural grace of dragonkind. When he was just a foot away from Vadrax's snout, he lowered his head in a perfect royal bow. Welcome home, father. I hope your battles were victorious. Formal. Correct. Exactly as a young prince should greet the emperor. Vadrax felt an unexpected twinge of disappointment. The war is won, he confirmed, and I find myself most curious about what has transpired in my absence. His gaze shifted to Emily. I observed your lesson. It was not what I expected. Emily straightened her shoulders, meeting the emperor's gaze directly, a boldness few would dare. If I've overstepped, your majesty, the fault is entirely mine. I've tried to teach Prince Caliph everything he needs to know as your heir, while also allowing him the joy of childhood. Joy, Vadrax repeated, the word feeling strange in his mouth. Dragon younglings were traditionally raised with strict discipline and formal education. Joy was not a consideration, and yet, his son appeared both well-educated and happy, a combination Vadrax himself had never experienced as a youngling. Father, Caliph said suddenly, Emily has taught me about your victories and your wisdom. She says I have your eyes and your strength will come in time. The young dragon stood taller. I've been practicing my fire breathing every day, though Emily makes me do it only in the special room with the stone walls. Does she indeed? Vadrax looked at the human woman with new interest. Most non-dragons feared dragon fire to the point of discouraging younglings from practicing at all. Safety first, Your Majesty, Emily said with a hint of a smile. But suppressing natural abilities leads to problems later, as the human saying goes. Before Vadrax could respond, a bell chimed somewhere in the palace, and Emily gave a small start. That's the signal for Prince Calitha's morning meal. With your permission, Your Majesty, I should take him to the dining hall. Lord Dracarys will arrive for formal lessons within the hour. Vadrax considered for a moment, then nodded. Proceed as usual. I will observe today before making any changes to my son's routine. Relief flashed across Emily's face. Thank you, Your Majesty. She turned to Caliph. Come, Your Highness. After breakfast, you can show your father how well you've learned to read the ancient scripts. Calitha's eyes brightened. Yes, Father, Emily taught me to read the Draconic alphabet, and the human one too. I can read in both languages now. Bilingual education was not in my instructions, Vadrax noted, following them as Emily led Caliph toward the dining hall. It was an opportunity, Your Majesty, Emily replied, her pace quickening slightly. Prince Caliph has an exceptional mind that absorbs languages readily. The human tongue gives him access to our literature and different ways of thinking, while strengthening his understanding of his native Draconic. As they walked, Vadrax noticed how palace staff reacted to his son. There was the expected deference, but also genuine smiles, warm greetings. Caliph knew many by name, asking about a guard's new hatchling or a cook's ailing mother. This was not the reserved, isolated royal upbringing Vadrax had known. In the dining hall, Emily efficiently oversaw the serving of Calitha's meal, a mixture of raw meats for his carnivorous dragon needs and cooked grains that Vadrax recognized as a human dietary staple. The prince enjoys variety, Your Majesty, Emily explained, noticing his questioning look. The palace physician says his growth and health are excellent. The diverse diet seems to benefit him. Vadrax watched as his son methodically ate everything on his plate, displaying manners that would satisfy the strictest etiquette master. When finished, Caliph carefully wiped his snout with a napkin, a human custom, but practical nonetheless. Emily, Caliph said when he had finished, may I show Father my treasure collection before Lord Dracarys arrives? If His Majesty wishes to see it, Emily answered, looking to Vadrax for approval. Curiosity piqued, the Emperor nodded. Lead on, Prince Caliph. His son's treasure collection, it turned out, was kept in a special chamber adjacent to his sleeping quarters. Unlike the hordes of adult dragons, filled with gold and jewels, Calitha's collection contained rocks of unusual shapes, feathers from exotic birds, dried flowers pressed between pages of books, and small trinkets given to him by various palace staff. This is my favorite, Caliph said proudly, carefully lifting a perfectly spherical stone that shimmered with an inner light. Emily found it by the lava pools when we were studying volcanic formations. She says it's a dragon tear from the ancient times, when our ancestors cried gems instead of ordinary tears. Vadrax leaned closer, astonished. The stone was indeed a dragon tear, incredibly rare and valuable, formed only when a dragon of immense power experienced profound grief. Such tears were said to hold magical properties. That Emily had recognized it and gifted it to his son rather than keeping or selling it spoke volumes about her character. A thoughtful gift, Vadrax acknowledged. You understand its significance? Caliph nodded solemnly. It reminds me that even the strongest can feel sorrow, and that's not a weakness. Emily says emotions are like weather. They come and go, and all of them have their purpose. Vadrax blinked slowly, a gesture of surprise among dragonkind. This was wisdom beyond his son's years, and certainly beyond traditional dragon teaching, which often emphasized control and suppression of emotions deemed weak. Before he could comment, Lord Dracarys arrived, an elderly dragon with scales faded from their original blue to a pale gray. The ancient tutor stopped short at the sight of the Emperor. "Your Imperial Majesty, we had no word of your victorious return." "So I've been told repeatedly," Vadrax said dryly. "Proceed with Prince Calith's lesson, Lord Dracarys. I wish to observe." The old dragon looked distinctly uncomfortable. "As you wish, sire." Today we were to continue our study of Imperial military history, focusing on the Battle of Scorched Sky. "Excellent," Vadrax rumbled, settling his massive form against the wall of the study chamber. What followed was not what he expected. Rather than simply lecturing, Lord Dracarys engaged Calith in a discussion, asking questions that required the young prince to think critically about strategy and consequences. More surprising was that Emily remained present, occasionally adding context about how the civilian populations had been affected by the historical battle, and what might have been a better approach, considering all factors. Lord Dracarys asked, after they had analyzed the considerable casualties on both sides. Calith frowned thoughtfully. Perhaps targeted strikes against their weapons facilities instead of widespread attacks? "Emily taught me that when you destroy homes, you create enemies, but when you only destroy weapons, you might create peace." Lord Dracarys nodded, appearing pleased rather than offended by the reference to the human's teaching. "A wise perspective, Your Highness. Military victory without civilian casualties is the mark of true strategic brilliance." The lesson continued with mathematics, science, and finally, a diplomatic role-playing scenario where Calith practiced negotiating with Lord Dracarys, playing the part of a difficult foreign ambassador. Throughout it all, Emily remained quietly in the background, offering encouragement with smiles and nods, but never interrupting. When the formal lessons concluded, Calith turned to his father with eager eyes. "Did I do well, father?" Vadrax considered his son carefully. "Your knowledge exceeds what I would have expected for your age. Your tutor and caretaker have served you well." The young dragon beamed at the praise, then glanced at Emily. "Can we show father the garden we planted?" "Please, if His Majesty wishes," Emily replied, looking to Vadrax for direction. "This garden interests me," Vadrax decided. "Show me." They proceeded to an inner courtyard that Vadrax remembered as a formal space with traditional flame-resistant dragon flora. It had been transformed. Now, sections of dragon plants grew alongside human vegetation, flowers in vibrant colors, herbs with enticing scents, and small fruit trees beginning to blossom. "We planted together," Calith explained proudly. "The dragon plants are strong and can withstand fire, while the human plants add color and food and nice smells. Emily says it's like the Empire itself, stronger with different species working together." Vadrax's gaze shifted to the human woman. "You've been teaching my son politics as well?" Emily met his gaze steadily. "I've been teaching him to observe the world around him and draw his own conclusions, Your Majesty. The garden was his idea after we read about ecosystem interdependence." For the remainder of the day, Vadrax observed as his son moved through a routine that blended traditional dragon education with human elements, music, art, physical games that developed coordination, and quiet time for reading. Through it all, Emily Parker provided structure and guidance, firm when necessary, but quick to praise and encourage. As evening approached, Vadrax found himself in the unexpected position of watching a bedtime ritual. Emily read Calith a story, alternating between passages in Draconic and in the human tongue, about a dragon and a human who became unlikely friends and went on adventures together. "Just one more chapter," Calith pleaded when she closed the book. "Tomorrow," Emily promised, gently stroking his scales. "Your father has returned, and I'm sure he has much to discuss with his advisors." Calith turned to Vadrax, hesitation evident in his golden eyes, so like the Emperor's own. "Will you come back tomorrow, father?" Something squeezed in Vadrax's chest. "I will. This is my home now that the war is won. And you're not disappointed in me?" The question was soft, vulnerable. Vadrax moved closer, lowering his massive head to his son's level. "No, Caliph. I am not disappointed. Quite the opposite. The young dragon's face brightened. Emily said you wouldn't be, but sometimes I worried because I'm not as big or fierce as the dragons in the stories. Size and ferocity are not the only measures of a dragon's worth, Vadrax said, surprising himself with the words. You have much to learn still, but you have made an excellent beginning. After Caliph had fallen asleep, Vadrax beckoned Emily to follow him. They walked in silence through the palace corridors until they reached his private study, a vast chamber with a ceiling high enough to accommodate his full height, walls lined with ancient scrolls and books. Sit, he commanded, indicating a chair that seemed prepared for human visitors. Emily sat, her posture straight, but her hands clasped tightly in her lap, the first sign of nervousness she had displayed all day. You have taken considerable liberties with my son's education, Vadrax began, his voice rumbling low in the quiet room. I have, Your Majesty, she acknowledged without attempting to deny or defend herself. Why? Emily took a deep breath. Because he is not just the Dragon Emperor's heir. He is Caliph, unique, brilliant, and deserving of an education that nurtures all aspects of who he is and who he might become. And you presume to know what that should entail better than the dragon traditions established over thousands of years. I presume nothing, Your Majesty. I observed Prince Caliph daily, noted his strengths, his challenges, his interests, and adapted accordingly. When Lord Dracarys saw the benefits, he adjusted his teaching as well. The results speak for themselves. Your son is advanced for his age in traditional subjects while also developing qualities that will serve him well as a future emperor. Vadrax studied her for a long moment, such as empathy, Your Majesty, creative thinking, diplomatic skill, the ability to see value in different perspectives. She leaned forward slightly. Prince Caliph will one day rule an empire that includes dozens of species. Understanding them, truly understanding them, not just commanding them, will make him a stronger emperor than one who knows only the dragon way. A human perspective, Vadrax noted. Yes, Emily admitted, but one I believe has merit. Your own history proves it. The emperors remembered most fondly, even in Dragon Chronicles, are those who ruled with wisdom as well as strength. Vadrax moved to the window, gazing out at the night sky. The same stars had looked down on him during the long nights of the war, when he had found himself increasingly relying on strategies suggested by his human generals, approaches that differed from traditional dragon warfare but proved devastatingly effective. My advisors objected to your appointment, he said at last. They said a human could not possibly understand how to raise a dragon prince. And what do you think now, Your Majesty? Vadrax turned back to her. I think that perhaps it is dragonkind that has failed to understand certain truths that humans grasp instinctively. He moved closer, his massive head lowering to her level. My son is happy. This is unexpected. Emily smiled softly. Happiness and excellence aren't mutually exclusive, Your Majesty. Often, they enhance each other. So it would seem. Vadrax straightened to his full height. You will continue as Prince Caliph's primary caretaker. However, I will be taking a more active role in his life now that I have returned. Relief washed over Emily's face. That would mean everything to him, Your Majesty. He has missed you terribly, though he tries to be brave about it. There is much I can teach him, Vadrax said, and it appears there may be things I can learn as well. He fixed her with his golden gaze. Tomorrow, you will show me everything about my son's life, his full schedule, his progress in all subjects, his strengths and weaknesses. I wish to know him as you do. It would be my honor, Your Majesty. Emily stood, recognizing the dismissal in his tone. She hesitated at the door. May I speak freely, Your Majesty? Vadrax inclined his head in permission. Your son loves you deeply. The stories of your courage and wisdom are his favorites. Every night before sleep, he prays for your safety and your return. Now that you're here, she smiled. Well, you've already given him the greatest gift possible. After she had gone, Vadrax remained in his study, his mind replaying the events of the day. He had returned expecting to find a properly subdued dragon youngling, being taught the rigid traditions of imperial rule. Instead, He had found a son with a bright spirit, a quick mind, and an education that somehow honored dragon heritage while embracing new ideas. The Emperor moved to a small chest on his desk, opening it to reveal a communication device, technology rare in the Empire but common among their enemies. He had taken it from a Krell commander, intending to have Imperial scientists study it. Now, he activated it, sending a secure message to his war council that he would not be attending the victory planning session scheduled for the morning. "The Empire has waited 3 years for my return," he murmured to himself. "It can wait one more day while I become acquainted with my son." As he prepared for rest, Vadrax found himself anticipating the morning with an emotion he rarely experienced: eagerness. Tomorrow, he would learn more about the garden his son had planned, hear him read in 2 languages, perhaps even see more of those improvised dances that had so shocked him initially. The Dragon Emperor, conqueror of the Krell Dominion and ruler of half the known galaxy, found himself humbled by a small dragon and his human maid. Whatever they were doing in his absence, it was creating something remarkable, a future emperor with both the strength of dragonkind and the heart of humanity. And for the first time since he could remember, Vadrax was genuinely curious about what the new day would bring. Dawn broke over the Imperial Palace, painting the crystalline spires in hues of amber and gold. Emperor Vadrax awoke before the morning bells, a habit formed during years of warfare. He moved silently through the palace corridors, his destination clear: the royal nursery. He expected to find his son still sleeping, but as he approached, he heard voices. Emily and Caliph were already awake. "Remember, Your Highness," Emily was saying, "today might be different with your father home. Do you think he'll want to join our morning flight practice?" Caliph asked, his voice hopeful. "That's for him to decide," Emily replied diplomatically. "But whatever happens, remember that your father has been fighting a war for 3 years. He might need time to adjust to peace." Vadrax paused outside the door, struck by the human's insight. It was true. He had awakened twice during the night, reaching for weapons that weren't there, his mind still partially on the battlefield. "I want to show him everything," Caliph said earnestly. "My books, my flying progress, the science experiments we started last week." "And you will," Emily assured him. "But patience is also an imperial virtue, remember? The 4th virtue," Caliph recited. "Not one of the ancient 3, but added by Empress Cyrillin after the Century War." "Exactly right," Emily praised. "Now, let's prepare for breakfast. Your father might join us." Vadrax chose that moment to enter, finding his son practicing what appeared to be stretching exercises while Emily arranged his formal morning attire. "Father," Caliph exclaimed, abandoning his exercises to bow properly. "Good morning." "Good morning, Prince Caliph," Vadrax replied, inclining his head. His gaze shifted to Emily, who had dropped into a curtsy. "You begin your days early." "Yes, Your Majesty," she responded, rising. "Prince Caliph has shown a natural preference for morning activities when his mind is freshest. We adjusted his schedule accordingly." "Logical," Vadrax approved. "What is this morning flight practice I heard mentioned?" Caliph's eyes widened with excitement. "Emily helps me practice gliding and wing control. My wings aren't strong enough for real flying yet, but she's designed exercises to strengthen them." "Show me," Vadrax commanded, curiosity piqued. After a quick breakfast, they proceeded to an inner courtyard with high walls and soft ground cover. Emily efficiently set up what appeared to be an obstacle course with varying heights and distances. "We begin with stretching," she explained, demonstrating movements that Caliph followed with practiced ease. "Then basic gliding from different heights, gradually increasing distance and adding maneuvers." Vadrax watched, impressed despite himself, as his son navigated the course with determination. The young dragon's technique was far from perfect, but the exercises were cleverly designed to build strength and confidence without risking injury. "Your wing position needs adjustment on the turns," Vadrax found himself saying after Caliph wobbled through a gliding turn. "Would you show me, father?" Caliph asked eagerly. Without thinking, Vadrax extended his massive wings, demonstrating the proper angle. "Like this." It creates greater stability while maintaining maneuverability. For the next hour, the Dragon Emperor found himself engaged in an impromptu flying lesson with his son, demonstrating techniques that had been taught to him centuries ago. Emily observed quietly, occasionally offering encouragement to Caliph or suggesting adaptations for his smaller size. "You understand dragon physiology well for a human," Vadrax noted during a break, watching as Emily helped Caliph with wing stretches. "I've studied extensively, Your Majesty," she replied. "The Imperial Library has excellent anatomical texts, and the royal physician has been very helpful in explaining developmental stages." "She knows everything," Caliph declared proudly. "When my first wing joint started aching during growth, Emily knew exactly what stretches would help." The morning continued with academic lessons from Lord Dracarys, though Vadrax noted how the elderly tutor seamlessly incorporated Emily's suggestions and teaching methods. Rather than the rigid, lecture-based education Vadrax had experienced, Calith's learning involved discussion, practical applications, and connections between different subjects. After the formal lessons, Emily announced it was time for what she called Exploration Hour. "Today we were planning to continue our study of volcanic processes," she explained to Vadrax. "Prince Caliph has been fascinated by how the royal blacksmiths use controlled heat for metalworking, which led to questions about natural heat sources." "The palace sits on an ancient volcanic system," Vadrax noted. "There are chambers below where the heat is quite educational." "Could you show us, Father?" Caliph asked, practically bouncing with excitement. "Emily has only been able to take me to the upper observation areas." Vadrax considered for a moment, then nodded. "Very well. The lower chambers are restricted, but as my heir, you should know all parts of your future domain." The Emperor led them through seldom-used corridors and down spiral staircases, eventually reaching levels where the air grew noticeably warmer. Emily had brought along a notebook and was helping Caliph record observations about temperature changes and geological formations. "These chambers were carved by my ancestors," Vadrax explained as they entered a vast cavern where pools of molten lava cast an orange glow over everything. "Dragons naturally seek heat sources for our homes. The palace was built here specifically because of these volcanic features." Caliph stared in wonder at the bubbling lava pools. "It's beautiful," he breathed. "And dangerous," Emily added, keeping a cautious distance. "Prince Caliph, remember what we discussed about observation safety?" The young dragon nodded seriously. "Respect natural forces. Observe carefully before approaching. Always have a path of retreat." "Good," Emily and Vadrax said simultaneously, then glanced at each other in surprise. "The principles of battlefield strategy apply equally to scientific exploration," Vadrax commented, finding unexpected common ground with the humans' teaching. As they continued their tour, Vadrax explained how the heat was channeled throughout the palace for various purposes, from the obvious needs of dragon comfort to more practical applications in forges and kitchens. Caliph asked thoughtful questions while Emily helped him document everything in his notebook. "This explains so much about imperial architecture," Emily remarked as they observed an ingenious system of heat transfer. "The human quarters always seemed unusually warm compared to other structures I've known. Dragons prefer higher temperatures than most species," Vadrax acknowledged. "But the palace was designed to accommodate all who serve the Empire. The human wing is actually cooled considerably from what we dragons would find comfortable. A gesture of consideration that humans serving the Empire greatly appreciate, Your Majesty," Emily replied with a smile. As they were preparing to return to the upper levels, a low rumble shook the cavern. Vadrax tensed immediately, his warrior instincts flaring. Before he could react, Emily had already moved to Caliph's side, placing herself between the young prince and the nearest lava pool. "Just a minor pressure release," Vadrax assured them after a moment, impressed by Emily's protective instinct. "It happens regularly. Like a safety valve," Caliph observed. "Similar to the ones in the science books Emily found for me." "Precisely," Vadrax confirmed, leading them toward the exit. "Nature and engineering often mirror each other." Back in the palace's main levels, they continued through Calith's daily schedule. The afternoon included physical training adapted for a young dragon, diplomatic studies through role-playing scenarios, and what Emily called creative time, an hour dedicated to art, music, or storytelling. Today's creative time featured Calith working on a composition he had apparently been developing for weeks, a musical piece meant to be played on both dragon wind instruments and human string instruments simultaneously. The frequencies complement each other, Calith explained earnestly to his father. Emily taught me about harmonics and mathematical ratios in music. A surprising application of mathematical principles, Vadrax noted, watching as Emily helped Calith adjust notation on a complex-looking score. Prince Calith discovered the connection himself, Emily said proudly. He noticed patterns in the music that matched patterns in his mathematics lessons. As evening approached, Vadrax found himself invited to join the bedtime ritual he had observed the previous night. This time, however, Calith asked if his father would tell the story. "Tell me about the war, father," the young dragon requested. "Not the scary parts, but something brave you did." Vadrax considered for a moment, aware of Emily's attentive presence as she arranged Calith's sleeping chamber. "Very well. I will tell you about the Battle of Crimson Nebula, where we faced an enemy fleet that outnumbered us 3-1. For the next half hour, Vadrax recounted the battle, carefully emphasizing strategy and courage rather than bloodshed. He found himself naturally adapting the story for his young audience, something he had never considered doing before. To his surprise, both Calith and Emily listened with rapt attention. "What happened to the enemy commander?" Calith asked when Vadrax described the final surrender. "He was captured and treated with respect according to the ancient codes of warfare," Vadrax replied. "He now serves the Empire as a military advisor, helping us understand Krell strategies." "You didn't execute him?" Calith seemed surprised. "No. He fought honorably, and his knowledge is valuable. True victory sometimes means winning an enemy to your cause rather than destroying them." Emily smiled approvingly. "That's similar to what we read in the history of the fourth expansion, isn't it, Your Highness? About Emperor Calistrax converting former enemies into allies." "Yes," Calith exclaimed. He said, "A dead enemy can no longer threaten you, but a converted enemy strengthens you twice over. You have been teaching him the words of Calistrax." Vadrax asked Emily, genuinely surprised. Those particular teachings were not typically part of a youngling's education. "The Imperial Library contains the complete chronicles," Emily explained. "When Prince Calith showed interest in military history, I thought it important he understand the philosophy behind the tactics." After Calith had fallen asleep, Vadrax motioned for Emily to follow him again. This time, they walked to one of the palace's many balconies, overlooking the capital city spreading below them, lights twinkling against the growing darkness. "You have given my son an extraordinary education," Vadrax said after a long silence. "Different from tradition in many ways, yet I cannot fault the results." "Thank you, Your Majesty," Emily replied quietly. "Prince Calith makes it easy. He has a remarkable mind and spirit." "Yes, he does." Vadrax turned to face her directly. "I wish to understand your methods more thoroughly. What philosophy guides your approach to his education?" Emily considered her answer carefully. "I believe in balance, Your Majesty, between discipline and joy, between tradition and innovation, between structure and freedom to explore." She gazed out at the city. Prince Calith is heir to an empire of remarkable diversity. His education should reflect that, drawing wisdom from dragon traditions while remaining open to valuable ideas from other cultures, including human culture. "Yes," she acknowledged. "Humans may lack your physical power and longevity, but we have our strengths. Adaptability, creativity, a certain resilience of spirit." Vadrax made a sound that might have been a chuckle. "You demonstrated that resilience today in the volcanic chamber. Most beings would have fled from danger, yet your first instinct was to protect my son. He's been in my care since he was newly hatched," Emily said simply. "His safety and well-being are my primary concern, above your own," Vadrax noted. This is not common among non-dragon kind. Perhaps more common than you might think, Your Majesty. Many humans would give their lives to protect a child in their care, regardless of species. Vadrax studied her with new interest. You have served the imperial household for 5 years now. Before becoming my son's caretaker, you worked in the diplomatic archives, did you not? Yes, Your Majesty. I was translating human historical texts for the Imperial Library. And before that, what brought you to Dragon territories? Emily's expression became more guarded. I was a refugee, Your Majesty. My home colony was destroyed in the frontier conflicts before you unified the border regions. Vadrax nodded slowly. The frontier conflicts had been brutal, a series of territorial disputes that had eventually led to imperial intervention and annexation of the contested regions. Many humans had been displaced during that time. And yet you bear no apparent resentment toward dragonkind, he observed. Individual dragons were not responsible for political conflicts, Emily replied diplomatically. And your intervention eventually brought peace to the region, albeit at great cost. A diplomatic answer, Vadrax noted with a hint of amusement. You would have done well in court negotiations. I prefer my current position, Your Majesty. Helping shape Prince Calith's understanding of the world is a privilege beyond measure. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a palace messenger, a slender, reptilian saurian who bowed deeply before delivering his message. Your Imperial Majesty, the War Council awaits your presence. The Krell ambassadors have arrived to formalize the surrender terms. Vadrax nodded. Inform them I will attend shortly. After the messenger departed, the Emperor turned back to Emily. It seems duty calls. We will continue this discussion another time. For now, maintain my son's schedule as established. I will join when possible and observe further. As you wish, Your Majesty. Emily curtsied, then hesitated. May I make one suggestion? Proceed. Prince Calith has prepared a small presentation about the star systems affected by the war. He created it as part of his astronomy studies, hoping to show you upon your return. Perhaps, if your schedule permits, you might allow him to present it during your council meetings? It would mean everything to him, and it might provide an interesting perspective for your advisors as well. Vadrax considered this unexpected request. Traditional protocol would never allow a youngling in war council meetings. And yet, if his son was to rule someday, early exposure to imperial governance had merit. Arrange it, he decided. Tomorrow, during the afternoon session, we will be discussing reconstruction efforts for damaged systems, a fitting topic for his first council attendance. Emily's face brightened. Thank you, Your Majesty. He will be well prepared and conduct himself properly, I assure you. The following day brought new surprises for the Dragon Emperor. As promised, Emily had Calith ready for the council meeting, dressed in formal attire that mimicked his father's own regalia in miniature. The young prince carried star charts he had created himself, with careful notations about each system's resources, population, and strategic importance. When introduced to the council, a mix of elder dragons and representatives from allied species, Calith displayed perfect royal manners, addressing each member with appropriate honorifics. Several counselors exchanged impressed glances, clearly not expecting such poise from one so young. With your permission, Father, Calith began formally. I would like to present my analysis of the Outer Rim systems affected by the recent conflict. Vadrax nodded his approval, and what followed astonished even him. His 3-year-old son delivered a concise, yet comprehensive overview of the war's impact on civilian infrastructure, trade routes, and ecological systems. Where most military analyses focused solely on strategic assets and conquest, Calith's presentation highlighted interconnections between seemingly unrelated factors. The Nelvaran system lost 70% of its agricultural capacity, the young dragon explained, pointing to a star chart. This doesn't just affect local food supplies, but impacts the medicinal herb trade to these 3 neighboring systems, which in turn affects healthcare availability in this entire sector. The council members listened with growing interest as Caliph methodically outlined how reconstruction efforts might be prioritized to create cascading positive effects rather than addressing each system in isolation. When he finished, there was a moment of silence before Lord Dracarys spoke. Your Highness has clearly inherited his father's strategic mind, combined with a remarkable understanding of civilian concerns. Indeed, agreed Ambassador Thelian, one of the few non-dragons on the council. These perspectives might not have been considered in our traditional approach to post-war reconstruction. Vadrax studied his son with undisguised pride. Where did you learn to make these connections, Prince Caliph? The young dragon glanced at Emily, who stood quietly at the back of the chamber. Emily taught me to look at problems from multiple angles. She says that in an empire of many species, solutions must serve many needs. Several council members turned to look at the human woman, who maintained a respectful posture despite suddenly becoming the center of attention. An insightful approach, Vadrax acknowledged. Council members, I propose we incorporate Prince Caliph's analysis into our reconstruction planning. Ambassador Thelian, work with the economic advisors to model these interconnected effects. After the council meeting adjourned, Vadrax noticed how several members approached Caliph with genuine questions rather than mere courtesy. His son answered thoughtfully, occasionally deferring to Emily when a question exceeded his knowledge. The human has taught him well, General Razorscale commented quietly to Vadrax. I had my doubts when you appointed her as his caretaker, but the results are undeniable. Prince Caliph thinks like a dragon, but with unusual perspectives that may serve the Empire well in the future. He combines the best of both worlds, Vadrax agreed, watching as Emily gently guided Caliph through a conversation with one of the more intimidating council elders. Something I did not anticipate, but now find myself appreciating. In the days that followed, Vadrax immersed himself in his son's life, participating in lessons, observing interactions, and gradually taking a more active role in Caliph's education. To his surprise, Emily welcomed his involvement without resistance, adapting the schedule to include time for father and son to bond. One evening, nearly 2 weeks after his return, Vadrax found himself in the palace gardens with Caliph, teaching his son about the constellations visible in the night sky. Emily had excused herself, giving them privacy, but Caliph seemed distracted. What troubles you, my son? Vadrax asked, noting the young dragon's restlessness. Caliph hesitated. Father, now that you're home, will Emily have to leave? The question caught Vadrax off guard. Why would you think that? I heard Lord Karath say that with you returned, there's no need for a human caretaker anymore. Caliph's voice trembled slightly. He said proper dragon nobility should raise the future emperor. Vadrax made a mental note to have a private conversation with Lord Karath about discussing such matters where young ears might overhear. Lord Karath is entitled to his opinion, but the decision is mine alone. And what is your decision? Caliph asked, his golden eyes wide with concern. Vadrax considered his answer carefully. In truth, he had been contemplating this very question. Traditional protocol would indeed suggest replacing Emily with a dragon caretaker now that the emergency of war no longer kept him from his parental duties. Yet the evidence of her positive influence was undeniable. Emily will remain as your caretaker, Vadrax decided firmly. Her methods have proven effective, and continuity in your education is important. Relief washed over Caliph's face. Thank you, Father. Emily is the best teacher ever, and she tells the best stories, and she never gets angry when I make mistakes, just helps me learn from them. She has a different approach than dragon caretakers, Vadrax acknowledged. But perhaps that is precisely what makes her valuable. The following morning, Vadrax summoned Emily to his private study. She arrived promptly, her expression curious but composed. You wanted to see me, Your Majesty? Yes. Vadrax gestured to the same chair she had occupied during their first private conversation. I have been observing you with my son for 2 weeks now. I have spoken with his tutors, his guards, even the palace physician. All confirm what I have witnessed myself. You have provided Prince Caliph with exceptional care and education. Thank you, Your Majesty. I've done my best to serve the imperial family. You have done more than that, Vadrax stated. You have introduced innovations in the royal education that, while unorthodox, have produced remarkable results. Emily waited, sensing there was more to come. I am officially extending your appointment as Prince Calith's primary caretaker, Vadrax announced. Furthermore, I wish to formalize your role as educational advisor to the royal household. Emily's eyes widened. Educational advisor? Your Majesty, that position has traditionally been held by elder dragons with centuries of experience. Precisely why change is overdue, Vadrax replied. The Empire evolves, as must our methods of preparing future rulers. He leaned forward slightly. Your approach, balancing traditional dragon knowledge with perspectives from other cultures, has proven its worth. I wish to see it expanded. Expanded, Your Majesty? Beyond Prince Caliph. There are other young dragons of noble houses who would benefit from your methods. With your guidance, we could establish a new educational protocol for the next generation of imperial leadership. Emily appeared momentarily stunned. That would be a significant departure from tradition, Your Majesty. Indeed, and long overdue. Vadrax moved to the window, gazing out at his empire. The war taught me many things, Emily Parker. Chief among them was that traditional dragon tactics alone would not have secured victory. It was the integration of strategies from multiple species, human ingenuity, Saurian stealth techniques, Vordanian technological adaptations, that ultimately prevailed. He turned back to her. If diversity of approach proves superior in warfare, why not in education? In governance? In all aspects of imperial function? A progressive view, Your Majesty, Emily observed carefully. A practical one, Vadrax corrected. The Empire has always evolved to incorporate the strengths of its constituent parts. It is time our educational system reflected that philosophy more explicitly. Emily straightened in her chair. In that case, Your Majesty, I accept the position with gratitude and commitment. I believe Prince Calith represents the beginning of a new era for the Empire, one that honors dragon heritage while embracing the contributions of all imperial citizens. Well said, Vadrax approved. We will begin implementation immediately. You will continue your direct care of Prince Calith while developing a formal curriculum that can be adapted for other noble younglings. As Emily departed to resume her duties, Vadrax reflected on the unexpected turn of events. He had returned from war expecting to find his son being raised according to rigid dragon traditions. Instead, he had discovered a new approach, one that honored the past while preparing for a different future. The Dragon Emperor moved to his desk, where battle plans had been replaced by his son's drawings and educational reports. One particular image caught his eye. Calith had drawn his father and Emily standing together beside him, all three surrounded by stars representing the Empire. Vadrax traced the childish drawing with one claw, remembering the presentation his son had given to the War Council. The young prince had shown wisdom beyond his years, considering not just conquest and glory, but the complex interconnections that sustained an empire of diverse peoples. Perhaps, Vadrax murmured to himself, this is precisely what I needed to find upon my return. Later that day, the Emperor watched from a balcony as Emily conducted Calith's afternoon lessons in the garden they had planted together. Dragon and human plants thrived side by side, just as dragon and human educational philosophies had merged to create something new and vibrant in his son. The Dragon Emperor had indeed returned early from war, and what he had discovered his human maid doing with his son was nothing less than preparing the Empire for a more integrated, harmonious future. It was not what tradition would have prescribed, but as he observed his son's bright intelligence and balanced perspective, Vadrax could not imagine a better outcome. In the garden below, Calith successfully breathed a small, controlled flame that lit a special fire-resistant lantern Emily had designed for practice. The human woman applauded, her face alight with genuine pride, while the young prince beamed with accomplishment. Well done, Vadrax rumbled, loud enough for them to hear. Both looked up, surprised by his presence. Caliph waved excitedly, while Emily offered a respectful bow. "Would you join us, Father?" Caliph called. "Emily says I'm ready to try the moving target exercise." Without hesitation, the Dragon Emperor spread his wings and glided down to the garden, landing beside his son and the human who had changed everything. "I would be honored," Vadrak said, and meant it. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.